Color blindness is essentially a deficiency in people's cones. So in our eyes, we have both rods and cones. And rods allow us to see black and white and kind of fuzzy detail, and cones allow us to see color and finer detail. So some people are born with a genetic variation that makes their cones not as finely attuned to different kinds of colors. So I think this graphic really helps. You'll notice that some wavelengths of light trigger the blue cones. There are three different kinds in our eyes. Some wavelengths of light trigger the green cones, and some wavelengths of light trigger the red cones. But what you'll notice if you look at this diagram is that the blue wavelengths of light are pretty much distinct, but the red and green wavelengths of light are much closer together. So reds and greens sort of bleed together into almost like a greenish yellow color, and are mostly indistinguishable for people who have red-green color blindness, which is the most common form of color blindness. I think there's a misconception that people who are colorblind don't see any color, because it sounds like colorblind. It sounds like you'd be blind to color entirely, but really what it is an inability to see differences between certain kinds of colors, with red and green being the most frequent. Currently, there's not a way to change the genetic makeup that codes for those cones and fix the underlying problem, but there is a way to use specialized glasses. And essentially what those glasses do is they filter out this wavelength of light right here. So this range of wavelengths are completely filtered out by these glasses, which essentially take these two curves and push them apart, making it easier for a person who's colorblind to distinguish between those two wavelengths. And as a result, they would see more vibrancy between reds and greens.
I did a test when I was about 6. They were planning on giving me this test because my mom's dad was colorblind, so they knew that my mom was likely a carrier. So they were anticipating on testing me, and they'd also noticed as a kid I had a hard time, but when I took the test, they told us that I was red-green colorblind. So to be honest, I've gotten kind of used to doing everything. When I was a kid, a young kid in elementary school, I had a hard time picking out clothes. I remember an instance wearing one red and one green sock because I woke up and my room was kind of dim, and I just grabbed them, and it wasn't until that day when I came home my mom said something to me. But other than that, I guess I don't notice many things being too difficult for me. I can remember one instance a few years ago. It was probably 2 years ago, when it was late at night, so it was so dark I couldn't see the pattern of the lights on the stoplight. Because usually I can tell the color, but when in doubt, if you can't, you always the pattern, red, yellow, green. So I couldn't see the pattern, and it was a really dim green light. So I went up to that stoplight really slow, and people were driving past me, and then I realized it was green. But other than that, I haven't really noticed too many difficulties with that. So the term definitely gives a bunch of people a false idea of what it is. It makes it sound, you can't see color, obviously. That's color blindness, is what it sounds like. But I agree color deficiency would probably be a better term to describe it, because it's more like the differentiation of colors and telling them apart, and not being able to physically see the colors, because obviously we can see colors, just some of them are much harder to differentiate from each other.
So my parents first discovered I was colorblind when we were hiking, and I was super bored. So what they decided is for every red flower I could find, they'd give me a nickel. And we were walking back past this huge clump of red flowers, and they're like, well, he can't be kidding and not see them, because there's money on the line. And they're like, hey, do you see any red flowers over here? And I couldn't see any of them. So that's how I first discovered I was colorblind.